Let me tell you why I think that iridology and sclerology should be taught together. I really do. They complement each other perfectly. Iridology tells you a lot about your genetics and the history of your body from the time you're born to this very day. It is very, very slow in responding. Okay, so we've knocked out 2 of the signs in the iris of the eye. Now we're going to talk about traveling lines. As I said earlier, there's 4 muscles in the eye. They overlap a little bit more than this, but I want to show you there's 4 distinct muscles in the eye. So instead of, you would think of cutting, if you're going to put quadrants in the eye, you would go like this, but what you do is you go between the muscles. So the quadrants in the eye are more like if you put an X in the middle of the eye. So this would be one quadrant, this is another one, and this is another one. To be a traveling line, you have to pass a quadrant. So if you have something like this that crosses over the quadrant, that is a traveling line. If it goes like this, it is not a traveling line. If it's like this, it's a traveling line, as long as it goes from one quadrant to another quadrant. Is everybody cool with that? Do I need to explain it in another way?
I don't think so.
Okay. So there's only 2 things that show up as traveling lines. One indicates glandular fatigue or a glandular problem, and that would be a traveling line towards the nose. On the outside, towards the ear, because this would be the ear, the traveling line indicates lymphatics or lymph nodes, which was huge for me because you cannot see lymph nodes in a brown eye. I know IPA says you can, but I totally disagree. A true brown eye you cannot see lymphatics in, or at least I have not in 27 years, 28 years. So to be able to see lymphatics in a brown eye is extremely helpful because it's not typical for a brown eye. That's more of a blue eye problem. So inside gland, outside lymph. So this would be the person's ear over here. There's a traveling line because a quadrant would go like that.
I had a question trying to correlate transversals with traveling lines, and if there was one in your mind.
Not at all. No. What happens for a transversal, that happens on the iris of the eye for people who don't know what a transversal is. But you see how there are these lines here, these fibers? What a transversal is there's such a weakness there in that part of the body that one of these snaps. One of these fibers snaps, and instead of going like the spokes on a wheel or like that, it will go kind of like this because it snapped, it broke. It's just kind of dangling there. That's what a transversal is. That usually indicates there's a weakness in a certain part of the body, wherever that, if it would be in the lungs, it would be here. If it would be in the liver, it would be here, and so on. But this is in the white of the eye, and it has nothing to do with this. If it's on the outside, it means lymph. On the inside, indicates glandular problems. I'm glad you said it because this says traveling lines and transversals sound pretty close, but they're 2 completely different things. Okay, this too would be a traveling line, and it's on the outside, so it would be lymph. Cherie says in Australia, they teach you that it's lymph, but it can be, you have to watch your heart. I don't know why. She doesn't know why. But I just want you to know that's what the Australians teach. But she definitely agrees it has something to do with lymph because the person's ear would be over here. Now there's also kind of like a connecting line, and we're going to cover that. The glandular line is still a traveling line, but it can sometimes, or usually, connects things together. For instance, this one is heading towards the adrenals, and it comes out at the thyroid. And it doesn't even have to go up like that. It can just be this part here. But it's going right towards the adrenal. So that indicates there's a glandular imbalance because it went past the quadrant. Because the quadrant would go like this. So past the quadrant here. But it's connecting these two. So that means this person has a glandular problem that's involving the thyroid and the adrenals. The rest of it's going to be on the lines themselves, on the blood vessels themselves and what they mean. I broke them up to 4 different things. One is position, one is proximity, or how close it is to the iris, the prominence, how thick and angry it looks, and the shape. What I do is I give a point for each one. So if you have the position, I count that as a 1. If it's really close, I'll count that as a 1. If it is really mean and angry looking, I'll count that as a 1. And then various shapes mean different things. I will give that a 1 too. So when you look in somebody's eyes, especially, I mean, some people come to you and their eyes look like a road map, the white of their eye. And so you're like, what do I work on first? Well, if they have, it's close, I'll give it 1 point. Let's say it's a lung. So the lung has 1 point. Let's say the heart, it's angry and close. Well, that would be a 2 point. So this would take precedence. So we're going to talk first about position. And that is where this chart comes in. If you see it going from the muscle to here, you know it's the lung. If it's from the muscle to here, you know it's the breast. From the muscle to here, it's the heart. And so on. So, this one would go, let's see, I don't have these marked right. This one goes to the liver. I agree with that. This one goes to the liver. This one I would say is going to the adrenals or the kidney, which is the adrenals are right before the kidney. This one I would say is going to the lower back. Oh, I see. This one is going to the thyroid. This one right here. This one I would say is going to the upper back or the neck. But remember, it's always going to go from the muscle right towards that autonomic nerve wreath. It may bounce around a lot. Look at this, look how squiggly that is. But it's heading towards that. So if you see this, you go like, I don't know, where's it going? Well, go to the tip of it and go right towards the autonomic nerve wreath, and that tells you where it is. It could be, it's in this area right here that line's going to.
I would agree with the breast as well.
Mm-hmm. How about this one? Where would you say this is going?
Certainly the spine.
Absolutely, that's in the spine. And look in the sclera is indicating that there also is something, and you'll see that all the time. It's really rare to see a sclera sign and not see an iris sign. If you do, then you know it's more current. It's something that has happened recently. Wow, if it's in both of them, it's probably been there for a while, which is another advantage. You know, if someone comes to you and you'll say, oh man, you have weak lungs, but it's been years and years you had that, but looks like you hurt your lower back recently. That kind of impresses them, you know? and they see it as being valid, and they feel secure that you know what you're talking about. And someone believing that something will work helps. They call it the placebo effect, but hey, we'll take whatever help we can. If it makes it heal, who cares? Okay, how about this one right here? It'll go there. Now, most people think it's going this way, but remember, the end of the line towards the autonomic nerve wreath. So what would this be?
Heart and lung.
Yep. I'm thinking even the heart. Look. Yep. And this one would be heading right towards the lower spine again.
That's the part of the brain that affects decision making and exuberance in general.
Right. Yeah, that's going right into.
I would say the stomach or esophagus area.
Well, in this, that could be too. It all depends how close it is. I have the advantage of knowing this person, and they have a lot of yeast in the brain area, and look at the circulation to the brain. But you're right, it could also be stomach, especially if it's closer.